for our ding.
There's no ding when it started.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, probably because it's come to the Bluetooth. Yeah. Okay, it's been a long time. So welcome everybody back once again to the Sunday Review here. This time on Parshat Beha'alotecha, after a very, very busy Shavua season, which I hope you've had a chance to keep up with, at least from my little part of the woods. And tremendous condition, which the Maisa Beha'alotecha, as we know, the Parsha after a Moed is always very deeply mechuber to the Moed. And indeed, Beha'alotecha basically is the Parsha that concludes, it's the closure of all of the last elements that we had that were problematic among the Har Sinai that were introduced before. The last thing that is still outstanding is the problem of the Zekenim as opposed to Levavaviyu, who were Vayachazot Elohim Vayachu Vayishtu, and that only is handled here. Whereas Rashi tells us that Levavaviyu, that was central to the building of Mishkan, that was Shmini, and then when we finally get to here, Be'eshat Avira, there was the conclusion, which is strange. We have to figure out why it's particularly here, why it waited for here. But in any event, this is the last piece in that story. And what we need to see is that this parsha as a whole is the transitional parsha in what Chazal tell us is a transitional chomesh. What sense transitional chomesh? Because, once again, to remind you, the Chamisha Chum Sheter, according to Medrash, Keneged the Chamisha mentions of or in my separations. Cody looked very tight, Cody. And this one is Keneged the fourth. And the fourth is Vayavdel Elohim ben Or ben Achosha. And I'll have to put you right here. And that means that this is the Chumash of Havdalah. What is the Havdalah? The Havdalah is the Havdalah ben Yotzei Mitzrayim ben Anichasim La'aretz. Apparently that is one of the very fundamental Havdalahs that touches, obviously it's not a separate Havdalah, it's not listed in the Shiva Havdalahs, but it touches apparently on the essential distinction of the Mavdal ben Yisrael. So there's that level of Yisrael that reaches the dark of Kesa Haaretz only appears here. The Parsha itself is the transitional Parsha, in a sense, in the entire Chumash, to such an extent that, as Rashi tells us, the Gemara tells us, the two Nunim that are in the middle that actually break up the Chumash, so we have the Vayibin Sarot, took circle 85 letters. Those 85 letters consist of Chatzva Amudei Shiva, says the Gemara. What are the Shiva Amudim? Shiva Amudim are Keneged the Shiva Sifrei Torah. How do you get Shiva Sifrei Torah? I thought it was called a Chumash because it was a Chumash. It was 1/5 of a Sifrei Torah. So where do we get now? I mean, that's all we need is for the kids to have to trade in their Chumash and carry around the Shivuim. But the Gemara says, yes, that's right. Actually, the Shiva Sifrei Torah, because this, Vayibin Aaron, is a Sefer B'fnei Atzmo. Because of that, we have the Simaniyos, the Nun, that is on either side. And that is Mavda between the first part of Bamidbar and the second part of Bamidbar, turning what was once a single Chumash into 3 Chumashim, adding 2 Chumashim, basically to the story of what was once Chamish Chum Sheter, which now becomes the 7 Amudim, which is interesting because, of course, the Haftarah talks about the Shiva in terms of also something about the menorah itself is not just the Nerot, but the Mutzakot. Mutzakot is very much the idea of Amudeh, something that is solid, something that stands. And of course, this is, for some weird reason, the Parsha of the menorah. That's what is it doing here that everybody wants to know, and why we talk about how to make a menorah. That's really crazy. I mean, that's something that, of course, doesn't belong here at all. Perhaps if we can understand that. But in any event, the very fact that this splits up the Chumash means that this is the Havdalah itself. And the reason that Rashi brings for splitting up, this is not purpose of the Gemara, this is Rebbe's approach. This is Sefer B'fnei Atzmo, which we paskin la'halacha, and therefore we derive from here that the number of otiyot that for which your matzah of Sefer Torah is pei otiyot, and that defines a lot of different dinim about a kedusha of Sefer Torah. So it's really nagea, and it's brought in the Shulchan Aruch, and you can look that up. And the other aspect of the meaning of the two nunim, as Rashi takes it, there are other pshatim in there. As Rashi takes it, it's in order to be mavdir between the opening Puranut and the continuing Puranut. Now Rashi in the Gemara itself gives a pshat that the Ramban disagrees with very vehemently. Rashi here doesn't explain what he means. And the Ramban says that the meaning of the Puranut is that if you recall, and this of course is why it is totally the post-Shavuos Parsha. Totally the post-Shavuos Parsha because of the Vayis'u Mehar Hashem. So the fact that here is the place where we end the original Kabbalah Satira and start with this new problem, Vayis'u Mehar Hashem, so that instead of the facing the new world, the new life that they have, which is translating, of course, Kabbalah Satira into your everyday life, to be able to be Shemei the Baskal and Har Sinai, because you had said all times, and the idea of the Zechira. Yom Asher Amarata B'fnei Hashem Elokecha B'Sinai, and you're not supposed to forget any element of that day. And instead, Vayis'u Mehar Hashem, with it, the Midrash puts it, Kitinok Haborech B'Beit HaSefer, which is an unbelievable, immature reaction. The Medrash makes it dependent on literally that type of sensation. But up to here, we had all kinds of existential issues, What's going to be with my identity, and is it kvod atzmo doresh, and what do I do about kriyat tova? I mean, these are complex kind of things. There's a Ketina Kaborech and Beit HaSefer puts things into the most immature possible way. And I know it's a whole different thing, but you say the child has an existential problem when he's sitting with his Borech at the Sefer, because I can't take it anymore, It's like, I just want vacation. And we all remember that no more teachers, no more books, no more,
This week.
Huh? You were there?
Alice Cooper was the acting coach this week.
Oh, okay, there you go.
That song.
Wonderful. Okay, so everybody remembers those songs and those feelings in the last bell and the screams, and it doesn't matter where you're leaving from.
That's the Rambam's motion. For children, we have to give them sweets and candies because they don't understand the emes until they get older.
Okay, but I mean, this is like the absolute lowest of the lowest. Yeah, that's pure, total shkrur. That's all. All I want is fun. So that's the beginning, and that beginning. It's interesting thing for the Lashon of the Ramban. I forgot to bring my iPad. So I'm going to have a hard time finding some pages. But the Lashon of the Ramban is really very beautiful. Because he traces, and he says this, is that if it wouldn't have been for that issue, it's very likely that nothing else would have happened. It was everything that went wrong is traceable back to that Vayis'u Mehar Hashem. Okay? Oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to read that. I thought I had it. It's okay. Yeah, this is reading.
Yeah, this is.
Okay, thank you. Okay. But so that means that really what we're talking about over here is that the beginning of the end essentially comes here. And because of that, you have it?
I think it's this looks like it's part of it.
Okay.
Where it starts. Could be right here.
No, of course not. No. It would be at the Simoniot. Okay. It's thanks. So, I mean, what we have over here then is the conclusion of that entire period, the end of the Vayachazu, Vayochlu, Vayishtu, and the coming, what we were hoping for would be the actual conclusion of the potential of being part of the Nesiya of the Olah. And remember that the idea of the Nesiya of the Olah, I mean, if you think about it, the whole thing of Vayibin Saharon over here is a little bit crazy, because especially when it comes together with the description of the the Nisiyot, the Anan, and, sometimes it'll be there for a day, sometimes 2 days, 5 days, a week, and then that's it. Does the Rishonim speak out? All of that is to give you a sense of like what you have to put up with, because you never know. You're coming, do I unpack? Do I not unpack? If we've been here for 2 days, okay, finally, I'm going to unpack. You unpack, and now all of a sudden you got to go with it. So it's a mind-boggling kind of thing, And okay, but it means that it's part of the connection to the whole meaning of Torah, which is its connectedness to travel. It's connected to the Oren HaBriz, the sense of the movement of the Oren, which becomes Haloch, of course, not only the sense of the Halicha, but Mamish, the development of Torah in terms of Halacha, the way that the Mishkan evolves. Which is the way that the identity of Yisrael evolves into a unit, which stretches over time, it stretches over space, which we spoke about on Shavuot. All of that is beautiful up to that point, and then everything starts going downhill, and we really have that sensation that the whole first part of Parsha, is beautiful. It's like the conclusion of the wondrous events in Har Sinai, the restoration of the bris on Bahar, where we were capable of coming back, and then setting up the last stages of the Kedusha of Shevet Levi, and whatever the meaning of the Beha'alotecha, but it's certainly the sense of Aliyah, as the Medrash says, Kedei Beha'alotechem b'fnei Olamot. This is all in order to establish the godless of Yisrael b'fnei Olamot. And this continues up until that last moment of the Vayibitz Aharon. And then everything starts going downhill. And the truth is that the crazy lack of Seder, in which everything is completely out of order, the first part of the Parsha beginning in the second month, and then going back to the first month, and then coming back again to the second month, and the Nosim, which everybody obviously has pshat in it. This Furnos pshat is really an amazing pshat. And he says, the reason that it's all completely out of order is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is interested in talking about the things that he likes. He doesn't care about the order. So in order of how much he likes them, that's how much he puts them in order, right? So therefore, Siper HaKatuv, says the Sifurna, Siper HaKatuv, Arba'am Ma'asim Tovim Sh'asi Yisrael. These Ma'asim Tovim were meant, Shebem Zachu, L'ikanes La'aretz Miyad, Bilti Milchama. They were meant up until Shlach, to be able to come into Eretz Yisrael without even a need to battle for Eretz Yisrael. Just walked it. Lulei Amaragli. And that's basically what Moshe Rabbeinu says to Chovavir, Nosim Anachnu L'Makom. And that's we're going to walk right in, 3 more days, we're coming there. As Rashi says, all of this was Almanat L'ikanes La'aretz Miyad, which means that the entire idea of all of this talk of how many days you're going to stay, and years you're going to stay, and months all of it is ridiculous. Because as we pointed out earlier, the entire idea of the Mishkan is ridiculous. Spending an entire year on a 3-month trip that only happens once, that's the whole point of it. Unless it's meant to be so definitive that it consists of a imprinting, that's an existential psychological imprinting that literally you never change, which becomes the which applies even to the animals that track the Mishkan, koshki, to our vision of the Mishkan, which is why some of the Kabbalah's forum over here talk about the menorah as the ultimate of that, and that they have a Kabbalah that the menorah was actually hidden with the candles lit, but they remained lit. Which of course translates to Hanukkah and so on, as Rambam points out over here. But however one understands it. So, okay, that's a madrega that stands on its own. It's not a logistical question of how to travel. We were meant to travel. So what were these things that were going to take us to that level? So first of all, there was the amazing description of the beautiful Chanukah HaMizbeach, which of course becomes Hanukkah, linked deeply to the Beha'alotecha. It's what we read on Hanukkah for a very important reason, not because it happens to be called the words Chanukah HaMizbeach, because obviously it was directly that which causes Aaron to be Zochet to the menorah, which creates Hanukkah. Fine. Again, we have to look back into that. What's really the relationship? But in any event, for the first time that the Torah was able, first of all, to distinguish entirely the madrega of an actual act, an asiyah, that can be logistically defined and can be counted in very simple ways And each one of them is given a separate day and a separate parsha, only because of one reason. And that is because of the human consciousness that stood behind each one of them and the kavanah. This is the first time that that level of meaning for the individual intent is so fundamental. Plus the fact that it was integratable subsequently into Zot Hanukat HaMizbeach, leading to that. That was amazing. So that was the first thing Kadosh Baruch Hu fell in love with. That commit, nobody ever told him anything, nobody ever even hinted that there was an inyan of Hanukat HaMizbeach. And it's all very nice if there's a selfish aspect which is always part of ulterior motives. The fact that something ends up being precisely the same as everybody else's cannot be a coincidence. In other words, if everybody is arriving at the same conclusion from completely different points of view, that means that there's some fundamental underlying reality that's been translated by their experiences, that's being made aware of to them, and that means that it's real, because otherwise there would have been this break between each one of them, or whatever prejudices they have and how to look at it would have been expressed in the actual asiyah. Zero difference in the asiyah. And yet it's so important that we stress each one. The only place that such thing ever happened is because the whole concept of the Vayichan Yisrael, which is the integrative aspect of the various elements, and we traced it back on Shavuos to Saviv, the meat of Yaakov Avinu and Ish Birchato Berachotam, which becomes now the inclusion of everybody because of the fact that all are part of that vision of Machana, each according to the very specific awareness that they have. Okay, so that was one. Shenit. Second thing is the Zrizutam Binyan Chinuch Halavim. That's something we have to think about, but we know when we read Rashi, the idea of Vayasu Chen, that is repeated again and again. The Shevach Hagadol, the word Mishanem, it doesn't sound like it's like, I mean, what's the big deal? I understand, if I were Aaron, maybe I wouldn't want to go through it. This is 8,000 plus Levium that I had to pick up and wave, and that's one heck of a day at gym. I mean, that's unbelievable. Figure, average weight of Levium, I got 8,000. Okay, fine, but as far as B'nai Yisrael is concerned, they didn't have to wait. They just had to put their hands on it. It doesn't seem to be that difficult. We'll have to think about that. Shlishit was the unbelievable Zrizut B'Korban HaPesach. I mean, it certainly stands in complete opposition to the idea of Tinan Berech Beit HaSefer. As Rashi says, who knows, maybe he's going to think of new mitzvahs. Let's get the H out of here before he thinks up something new. And so the year, now is the time for the Korban Pesach. These guys are locked out. It's not fair. It's not fair. Lamani Gara. That's an amazing enthusiasm. Okay, so that enthusiasm, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very impressed with. And the fourth thing was the whole idea of being willing to get up and follow. And that's the Lech Tam Acharei Ha'el Yitbarach B'Midbar Af Al Pi Shehaya Ha'elot Ha'anan B'Zmanim B'lti Noda'im. The whole thing. And that's what they were told in advance. They're going through hell. You'll follow me, you have no idea what's going to be. Tonight, tomorrow night, 3 days, a year, who knows? You have no idea. No problem. We're off and running. That was like tremendously impressive, right? And I mean, you would have thought, because these were so important. There's a beautiful, so God puts them in order of his own excitement with them. I didn't order the chronology because that's so important, because it's so amazing. And that's why, even though Tchilat HaSefer is B'chodesh Hashem. And then Chanayatam, that's the introduction to Chanayatam, etc., etc. Fine. And that's the main tachlit, not the time. Lovely. Whatever you think is a beautiful, beautiful way of sensing the way that everything is sort of on the up at the beginning of the parsha, up until you get to those nunim hafuchim, so that all of those things are here right away. Beha'alotecha, that amazing remez, and that's the this very cute Chassidish word on that, which is it says by Aaron. So it says that Aaron was very sad because he wasn't lohuv or shifto, did not take a part of the action in the Chanukah Mizbeach with the Nisim, which we're going to have to understand, because, I mean, nobody stopped him from taking a part in the action. We're going to have to think about that before. But, I mean, especially when we understand each one came separately, there was no ti'um in advance, and that was what was so amazing about it. So, I mean, if you wanted it so badly, you could have showed up. You know, you don't show up, don't sit there and make a fuss about it. We'll discuss that. But whatever the case is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says then, Chayecha shelcha gadol mishelahem. And that was the Shata Madlik, right? So it's hard, you have to say it in Yiddish, you know, because in Yiddish it's really Chayecha, so the word is Sgeteran in Leben, meaning it's like so important to you that it's part of your life, Chayecha. That makes you Gadol Mishalayah, right? It's the extent of your enthusiasm, your involvement. That's the importance. And even though that's a Hasidic word, but it's really true in terms of the menorah. In other words, the essence of Aaron HaKohen is that continual enthusiasm. That's the idea of chinuch. Chinuch is always enthusiastic by definition. So always, you know, normally we give the word chinuch the beginnings. Yeah, because people could put up for one day, you know, it's new. And it's because it's new, so they're enthusiastic. But the idea of a Kohen, and that's why Kohen, every time a regular Kohen comes into the Beis HaMikdash for the first time, he brings a minchas chinuch. But Aaron brings that every single day. Because that became the chavitim, which is the minchas chinuch of any other Kohen. Because that's his essence. That was the v'samar b'libo, and that's what he retains all the time. And that's the mekarev abriyot the Torah and everything else that's in him, is the constant sense of renewal, freshness, and excitement, which are very much connected to the other things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was aiming on and loved and presented here according to the Sfuna. And that's the essence of Chinuch. So then, I mean, that's the case. We look at the Parsha, but that's the simple take on the Parsha. You read the Parsha, you listen to the Parsha in Shul, and it seems very, very much a split Parsha. And this whole beautiful part of the first part is all very nice, and it's Beha'alotecha, and then it's followed by this horrible Yerida. And that horrible Yerida is one step after the other until follow next week already becomes the Beis Meraglim and the Tisha B'Av, and we're already on our way to a horrible summer, you know. And it's like it's all coming back. It was so nice for a couple of days, you know. Then we had Shavuos, we had the Yemei Tashulim and Shavuos, we had those 7 days. Once that's over, and that's the Masorah, that Beha'alotecha is always read before the 20th day of Sivan. The 20th day of Sivan is the beginning of the period, which is Keneged, the months that are not blessed. So those are Keneged, the months, you know, each month has a period that's Keneged one of the Shvatim. These months are Keneged, the Shvatim of Reuven and Shimon who weren't blessed by Yaakov. You know, as we traced it back before, it was Ishkabir Kato Beirachota, so they weren't so fit for that. So that became that period of the month that requires Dan the Ma'asef at Kol HaMachanot. So they have to be sort of drawn along. But I mean, that's the lowest part of the year. And because of that, remember that for us, Kabbalat Torah is really when Yom Kippur, as the Gemara says in Ta'anit, right? So that's the Yom Simchat Libo, and that's where we have the dancing girls. So it says Yom Kippur. I understand why we need to have that, because that was the day that we were Makabel Torah, as Rashi says, that's the Luchas HaShmir. So essentially, the remez to this, Pi Kabbalah, is Ki Yad al Case Ka. Case Ka. Chof Sivan is Case Ka is Yom HaKippur. So from Chof Sivan to Yom HaKippur, it's downhill all the way, basically. It's the only tikkunim that you have is the Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur tikkun, but the downhill begins, and it's very much part of like what's so disturbing about Shavuos.
What's Chof Sivan?
Chof Sivan is the beginning of that period.
Why?
Because once 2/3 of the month is out, it becomes part already. It's like the Shavua for Shabbos.
It's the day after the Shavuos Chagiga.
Of the Tashlumi.
Yeah.
Against that. When?
Yeah, with the Tashlumi with the Chagiga.
It's the 14th.
No, the last day, because it's 7 days.
Yeah, it's 7 after 7. 7 after 6. 13th, 14th is it.
Oh, really? Isn't tonight the 20th?
Okay, so that's really, as I was saying, that's really part of what bothers us about Shavuos, because, I mean, really deep down you feel it when you're being kaim the chag and so on. There's this sense of something's not right, because, I mean, it doesn't really last. I mean, you know that it was, initially it was mikukal and it remains mikukal in our experiences, and whatever. Obviously, Shivas B'Tammuz is right around the corner, and that happened basically as a result of Kabbalah Satera on Shavuos. So that initial remez even to Moshe Rabbeinu, in Ogeh the Gevulei Har Sinai, which was the Lashon HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him Leich Reid. Leich Reid is exactly the word that's used later on. Kechalot Oludaberito becomes Leich Reid Kishichet Amcha, which was because of the Gevulei. The whole thing is clearly interrelated all the way back to the beginning, and because of that, Shavuos is a very difficult time. It doesn't leave you fulfilled. It leaves you, what do I do now? In a way that the other Yomim Tovim don't, because we were never zocha to the full restoration of the luchas. Obviously, we were never zocha to getting back the adoyim that were given to us on Har Sinai, and we were never zocha to a Torah shlema, in which it would be possible to say charut al-luchot is chelut al-luchot, which would have ended galut, which would have ended mortality, would have ended forgetting, would have ended the entire process that is so much part of our daily existence, that how are we supposed to really focus on it? So that's part of what we discussed on Shavuos, is the way that Shavuos is seen, meant to be understood, as extending across time, indeed, till it goes certainly up until Yom Kippur, and we're still involved in the Inyanim of Shavuos and in the Tikkunim of Shavuos, and provides us a mokum, really, for the whole idea of Kabbalah Satara. But I wanted to just point out to you that there's another very, very strange relationship in the parsha, in which there's a remez to the final step of this process, which is not Yom Kippur, and that is, just to give you some examples, if you listen to the words and you realize that something is very funny. So the Nasal Degel Machane B'Neidan Me'asef L'Chol HaMachanot Ve'Ha'asafsuf Asher B'Kirbo Yitavu Tava V'Hayomer Hashem HaMoshe Asfali Shivim Ish Im Et Kol Digei Hayam Yasef Lehem V'Yitzei Moshe V'Deber Al Ha'am V'Yasef Shivim Ish V'Lo Yasfu V'Yasef Moshe Al HaMachaneh Hamamit Asaf Asara Chomarim V'Lo Nasu Ad Ha'asef Miriam. What is that? Right. Now, of course, the period of Asifa, however, this is Sukkot. But in the deepest sense, Asifa is death. That's the literal Hayasef, right? Which, of course, has to do with Sukkot and Solas Goren V'Yekev and the time of the death of the year, the Tkufas Hashanah, and the transference to the new year, and, of course, unbelievably, the last step of Sukkot, which became, as the lowest expression of Kabbalah Satera, simplest there. So amazingly, these would go from Shavuos, which is Kabbalah Satera, through the Luchas Shniyim on Yom Kippurim, and until the Tkufas Hashanah, the end of that year, where we reach the craziness of Simchas Torah. Nobody knows where it came from, how it started. That goes back to the Mekures of Yisrael's relationship to Torah, and that has no mocker in halacha, and has no mocker. Nobody ever approved of it. Nobody liked it. It was alapam v'alchamatan of all the gedolim in every single city. It was amazing. You couldn't find anybody supporting this thing. All you could find is these truths about how horrible it is and what we could do to stop it. It was unstoppable, right? That means there's some fascinating development. I mean, it looks to be sort of downhill. It's a time. Can't even get your davening straight. There's so much tumult, and people are half drunk. They sing the davening in ridiculous ways. I mean, it's a horrible day in most places, right? And it stands in complete contrast to the seriousness of the idea of Shmini Atzeres originally. But the din on Shmini Atzeres, special tefillas, that's why it started in Chutz La'aretz, and then just absorbed across the board. So you're serious for 10 minutes, and the rest of the day is cuckoo. I mean, many other elements are cuckoo about it. I won't go into the details now, but the point is that it cannot be a coincidence that somehow or other the Yitzhak had to do with Asifa, which ends up in this ultimate Asifa. I'm going to explain that this is not just a cheap kind of interrelationship. There's a reason why this is all about this fundamental Asifa. So on one hand, we have Asifa. On the other hand, of course, we have the idea of the travel as somehow being nogea, the deepest kind of chashivas of what Torah is. It becomes the Beha'alotecha. It becomes the tikkun for the ego. That's really the ultimate tikkun of the ego, obviously. To say that the tikkun is in terms of Ayachlu, Vishtu, and Tamira is not true, because the Beha'alotecha was the essential tikkun, in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu was makabel that, and that became the Mishkan. And that became not just the Mishkan. What we miss is that the Mishkan itself is identified as travel. It's not the Beis HaMikdash. It's the Mishkan that is Hatzer Shikimengdi. And it's Bechol Mas Ehem, whether it's at the introduction of the Beis HaMikdash and Mishkan at the end of Shmos, that's the closing words. Leinei Kol Yisrael Bechol Mas Ehem. Or whether it's the closing of the Torah, essentially in our vision of where we're going, through the Midbar Amin. But the Bechol Masayim is what it's all about. This beautiful, beautiful poem from Rilke that brings out the immensity of what that achieves and how it's a completely different level of connectedness, and how it's, interestingly, it's the exact opposite of the last part of the parsha. So the last part of the parsha is entirely about comfort. That's all that it's about. They're running away from school like a baby becomes the second part of the parsha is all about, literally, the most absurd creature comforts. So that the first part of the parsha takes us from Kabbalah Satara the way our original vision. And then this becomes Vayibin Sa'aron, which is become a Yiddish expression that Al Pi Hashem Yisur, Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, And whenever, unfortunately, the horrible tragedies that took place over all those thousands of years ago, one day you're in one community, the next day you're up in the Goyim are throwing you out, murdering the babies, and fine, you have to go now, start life all over again, leaving everything behind. And this became the Yiddish and the Ladino statement of how it is that people viewed it. We understand, sometimes we can stay a year, sometimes 100 years, sometimes 3 months, whatever it is. Yisrael, that's it. We were here, now we have to get up and Yisrael. It's a very deep commitment to the nature of what it is to be part of that development of Yisrael. And that became the Vayibin Sa'aron, which becomes part of the war effort of Yisrael. And the Oivim of Yisrael, which as Rashi says, those are the haters of Klal Yisrael, that's what it's referring to. That's the Bisanecha, 2 different levels, one are Oivei Hashem, one are Seinei Bonov. And that's the Badim of the Orim itself, which is amazing, that's a beautiful medrash, that the very things that you carry the Orim with, which first of all, it's an Issa D'Oraisa to remove them. That shows how it's the only thing that you're not allowed to remove. And all the other came on the bottom, you took out the bottom. Logistic carrying staves. This is like poles that somehow or other says the medrash, beautiful midrash. You take the mamish beautiful midrash that mizot olamin amidbar, that the goyim would look at Klal Yisrael's travel, or the Davracher, the Lamatzech, la Yelat HaShachar, all of these things. Mizot HaNishkafa Kamo Shachar means that the Oren was a weapon. We think it's a joke, but later the lost art, some silly thing. It was based on a medrash. Because the idea of the Oren was indeed that these enormous laser beams would come out of the Badei Oren, the front of the Badei Oren. It's an unbelievable medrash. It's not one medrash, it appears all over the place. These laser beams would come out, and anything in front of them would just completely blow them up, If there were sand dunes in the way, just melt them into slag, and, guys would walk over them, So there were no There were no attacks, not by Goyim, not by. So they were saying, these aren't people, these are gods. How do they do that? And that's it's unbelievable. These are gods. They're not. Which human being knows how to use light like that? It took a while. It's unbelievable. And that's Hamalecha במדבר הגדול, והאומות והעקום רואים את העשן ואומרים מי זאת עולם מן המדבר כי תמרות עשן. Wherever they're going, there's always the smoke piling up. Every time there's another attack, the waves, all they see is the smoke of the bombs coming up, and the mushroom clouds, and it's, oh my God, what's this about? That place running. So, I mean, that means that the afutzo eivecha, the idea of the progress, the development, and the being able to change things, that aricha is so much part of what we are. So I want to read you such a beautiful, beautiful poem that Mamish touches on exactly these issues. And as is so often with him, he literally will use the words that the Torah uses to define the ideas. I mean, he relates this to the Chefetz of Kedusha. So he says like this: we are not permitted to linger. Obviously, in German, it sounds better. We are not permitted to linger even with what is most intimate. O wandering spirit, most wandering of all, how snugly the others live in their heated poems and stay content in their narrow similes. Taking part. Only you move like the moon, and underneath brightens and darkens the nocturnal landscape, the holy, the terrified landscape, which you feel in departures. So that's the Al Pi Hashem Yisod. So that which becomes so much part of Matos Maseh later on, the idea of freedom, and the ability to escape, indeed, the narrow similes, which everybody will see how this touches so deeply on the main sense of the parsha as we go on, that it touches on really the deepest insights of our connectedness to the new developments of this parsha, which are very difficult to see because of the strange transitions here. So because of that, I mean, on the one hand, it's constant aliyah. And then you thought that we were getting away from the Vayochlu Vayishtu. And in the silliest, strangest of ways, the rest of the parsha is essentially about Vayochlu Vayishtu, which is crazy, except it's Vayochlu Vayishtu, not all these wonderful things with the Shekhinah, but watermelons, salad dressings, pizza, and so on. I mean, it's literally, it's crazy. I mean, but that's what it's about. Oh, what are we going to do? We're going to have watermelon. Watermelon, of all things. That was the last thing you'd think is like the lowest of the law. I remember as a kid, watermelons. That was the one thing they used to have this black guy. And this was in the days, before there was freedom for the blacks in the South in Baltimore. They went to the back of the bus. They had different entrances. It wasn't like today. You see, had this black guy driving his little horse, and he had this wagon filled to the top with these enormous watermelons. Right? And I mean, in those days, the blacks didn't even attempt to talk English. They had this, pidgin talk. I had no idea as a kid what they were saying. I just knew that you would hear every couple of days, clip clop coming down the street, saying something strange like "whoa." Until somebody explained to me, it's watermelon, and that was the cheapest, simplest kind of food. But this should be the thing that Klal Yisrael, looks back at after eating the mun. What's the mun? Lechem avirim achlu ish. What happened to the watermelon? This is like the strangest idea of them, and then complaining about the salad dressing. There's not enough onions, not enough garlic. I mean, there's other things in salad dressings. I mean, you got lots of other flavors. These happen to be problematic flavors. It's because I'll talk about it in terms of pregnancy, or in terms of nursing, or in terms of learning different midrashim. And I mean, basically, the idea of the focus entirely on creature comforts in the most childish of ways. It's not simply that it starts with Ketino Kaborech. It's all about childishness. It's all about this absurd immaturity. that begins with a story that we don't even know what they were saying, right? What do they say? It doesn't say. The reason it doesn't say is because it's unimportant. What's important is they kvetch, they whine, like a bunch of children. They commit onanim is obviously the other references to masturbation, onanut. They commit onanim. So they're sitting there sucking their thumbs, basically, like a bunch of children. This is the first thing you have to, you know. Okay, so Chazal tell us what's the commit onanim. Oh boy, I haven't had a shower in 3 days. I'm so tired. You know, the Shekhinah saying, I want to be in my hair to bring you into Eretz Yisrael. And they're supposed to be all excited and like the Acharak Midbar. No, everybody's thinking about watermelon and showers and too much Torah Chaderech. And how come we don't get a chance to stop at Howard Johnson's along the way or something, you know? It's just, you got to admit it. It's almost meant to be funny. The contrast is just crazy in terms of the immaturity specifically, right? And this is not a small issue, because this little idea of a year of the changing of Kabbalah Satira to these issues completely define American Jewry today. And unfortunately, much of other things is totally defined by comfort foods, right? It doesn't matter that it's comfort foods in terms of literally, you know, how do we remain Jewish by having a kosher pizza shop and by having a kosher French restaurant and by, you know, and this becomes the big problem. If Mashiach comes, will they still deliver pizza? And you know, that's a big problem. It's not going to deliver pizza. I certainly don't want Mashiach. I mean, I won't admit it, but what is going to happen to my comfortable life and the insane music that you have to listen to be part of the Jewish community, you know, the sense of, you know, just making people feel at home. And that's important. Just feel childishly taken care of. And literally 90% of it is food issues. You know? And this is what people do day in and day out. Everyone's wondering, why is Israel all about food and nothing else, you know? You go out on the street, that's the only thing that's happening is the food. But it literally comes out of this parsha. You know, I mean, at least here it's not possible to lose it totally in the food because there's real things that are constantly involved. You have the Kuma Hashem v'yafutzrei v'echa as part of your day-to-day life. But when you don't have that, it completely takes over the narrative. You know? So your magazines are 90% about food. There are recipes, there are ads for food. It's amazing. So it sounds funny, but it's obviously not a small thing. And this indeed, I mean, that's what the Gemara says, that Ad sheyispal Adam, sheyikansu divrei Torah l'toch me'av, yitpalel shelo yikanes achilu v'shtia l'toch me'av. But it's not a small thing. It literally is the difference between the first part of the parsha, the Aliyah of Yisrael, and the last part of the parsha, which is the hopelessness of the situation that leads us ultimately back to Shivas V'Tammuz and to Tisha B'Av itself and Shlach, everything that's implied therein. So that, I mean, this is the Chazon Ish used to speak about this. That this is the most important Nakuda. Nobody understands that. Where do you get that from? The most important Nakuda is food. Not to be gorer after food in this fashion, because it will destroy your relationship to Torah. Everybody thinks the most important things are telephones and pornography. No, the most important things are pizza shops. That's quite astounding. Good. And in fact, the whole Haggadah of the Rabbeinu Bachya here centers around this contrast. So it talks about Or tzadikim yismach, v'ner rishayim yid'ach. Now, what is this? The Or tzadikim, or, he points out, is something that is not dependent on any matrix. Light, once there's light, that light is never going to disappear. So those photons just remain and they go forever and ever, right? Ner, on the other hand, is by definition a source of energy that requires input. So the moment it runs out, it runs out. Now you don't have anything. You're looking for the ner. And that's the difference between the Rasha, the ner Rishayim Yid'ach, which everything that they do is headed towards di'icha. It's headed towards going out. Because the moment ba'avdan gufo te'aveh tikvato, the guy's entire hope in life is just to be able to keep it going for one more day. And then what's going to happen? So the Malat Nefesh HaTzadik is here only or, that's forever. And that's therefore Yismach. That Yismach is Tosefet HaSaga V'Ruach HaKodesh. It means to be alive in the ultimate sense of Simcha. And therefore, it's Himshel Nefesh HaTzadik L'or, which is part of the whole Metzias of creation. And there it's the reason why Shlomo Melech tells us, Zer Shlomo Shlomo, Umot Adam Rasha Te'avei Tikva. Doesn't say Umot Rasha, it's Adam Rasha. Ki hanimshach achar toldot ha'adama u'mishtakea beta'avot ha'gufaniyot ends up losing everything. And that, of course, is kivrot ha'ta'ava. It's obviously not a small thing that became the whole machlokas between Moshe Rabbeinu and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, according to some Mefarshim. Is it possible to give them enough to break them of ta'ava? So they'll get sick of it. So you think in 3 months they're not going to be back to the same shtick? What's the deal? What's the point? Doesn't matter how much you give them. It's not going to change anything fundamental. So the contrast, even in the beginning here, of these two modalities of living really apparently has something to do with the choice of the Adam that you want to be. Do you want to be like the lowest possible Adam? Or do you want to be the highest possible Adam? And what is that highest possible Adam? He says, is the Nefesh HaTzadik is connected to the Or Shenivras B'Yom Rishon in Briyato Or HaRishon, which is why it says B'Nafshotayim Shel Tzadikim. Ima Melech B'Melachto Yashvu Sham. The highest function of Adam, as we never tire, is to actually be present in my separations and participate in the vision of your own creation. And that's the two Adams that are here. You could be that Adam who's Min Adama, that represents the entire development of the earth, or you could be that Adam who is just pure dirt, which is essentially what happens over here. It's turning everything into dirt. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says it. This is the contrast, because back to Kabbalah Satar itself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ani amarti Elohim atem u'vnei Elohim kulchem. One of the things about Elohim atem is you don't need bathrooms. Gods don't go to the bathroom. This was Paro's whole thing. He's got to prove he doesn't go to the bathroom, right? But it's no small issue, because the constant reminder of your animalistic incapability of efficient processing of the world, in a way that you could say, Tzadik ochel esova nafsho, when basically 70% of what you're eating is garbage that you're going to need to excrete. You can't derive from it what is needed, so you don't have the connection that is real, that is meaningful for an Adam that would be able to identify, I need this vitamin, I need this mineral, I need this protein, that's what I take, nothing is left over. No, see, I have diets and this and that, everybody's going to the bathroom. So says the minute Shani Amarti Elohim atem uvnei Elohim kulchem, that you wouldn't have to go to the bathroom. But you want to be like Adam, Tumutun, idiots. So now you can go for 12 kilometers. How do we know it's 12 kilometers? The Gemara says, well, I measured the distance that the Torah gives, which of course ad avel hashitim, the avelut on shitim. That's exactly the point of going to the bathroom, which is the etzem avelut that's involved in the whole process. And that means I'm giving up, and of course, what is known to be the most childish of anal comforts is exactly that issue. The bathroom is the comfortable place in the house. I don't need to do anything, right? That's amazing. Yeah, people spend more money on their bathrooms nowadays than anything else in the house. Why? That's comfort zone. It's unbelievable. So the entire idea of just keeping everything inside, doing everything that keeps me happy, entirely anal focus that becomes the exact opposite of the willingness to let go, which is the letting go of your comforts, as Rilke is pointing out. Stop thinking in the same ways, always doing the same things, trying to find something that covers you. You can't do that. You have to move on. It's not about taking part. And that's the most brilliant part of the poem, as we'll see. It's about something else completely. That something else is what we need to discover here, except that we need to break for Tfilat Harvit. But this is basically a brief review of the Inyanim that we've spoken about over so many years in the Parsha. And now, Bezrat Hashem, after Meir, hopefully we'll be able to get back. And if we're Zohar, we'll move on. See what wonderful new things we can see.